We had immediate family members of the deceased, as well as extended an invite to the mother of the 6-year-old child that was in the car. It was important for me to allow that mother the opportunity to view that video because her child was involved in that situation. So a couple of family members of the child also came into police headquarters. We provided them an option of 2 different options of the video. There's the video that very shortly will be released that is a redacted version. What that redacted version shows is the child is blurred out, and as well as some identifying information, the computer screen in the car, as well as an ID that was shown on a picture on a cell phone of the individual that's blurred out, and the injuries sustained to the individual for graphic reasons that's blurred out. A couple of the family members wanted to watch the unredacted version as well, so we provided both versions. We went through 2 different videos. The video of the officer that discharged his weapon and the officer that was the passenger officer as well. So we showed them both videos. And again, we were able to spend a little time together. Obviously, it's a very sad situation all the way around. You know, this family has been through a lot over the last several years, and I certainly expressed my acknowledgement of that fact that this family has been through a lot, and express my condolences to the family. It's, like I said, this is a tragic situation all the way around. But you know, the contents of what that meeting was, I'm going to leave that private because that was the moment with ourselves and the family. Having released that video, the media, you have had an opportunity to see that video ahead of its public release. It will be released in a few minutes of this press conference. But in reviewing that video, going through the evidence that we have, I believe that is a justified use of force that occurred the other night. When you take into account the fact that the officer found himself in a grave risk of serious physical injury or death, the use of that level of force is justified by law, and I do believe that is a justified use of force in this case. There still is investigating that will be done. As I said, there was a handgun recovered inside the car underneath the driver's seat that was found after a search warrant was obtained through the Attorney General's office. That handgun, again, was a Taurus 9mm handgun loaded with 7 rounds, 1 in the chamber and 6 in the magazine. That we are still working through to trace that gun. Working with the ATF, we will go back and trace that gun, so there's more work that needs to be done on that, as well as a lot of other follow-up, and again, there will be more interviews with the Attorney General's office. So with that, I will take any questions.
How is the 2 officers involved, how are they doing today?
You know, I think they're doing okay. It's a lot to process, and again, as I said yesterday, you know, I reached out to them, just making sure that they remember, and our wellness team is also involved, to remember that there are resources available and that they, you know, they're going to have to get rest, but also to avail themselves of those resources. The officer that discharged his firearm, that, as you saw in the video, physically he'll be okay. The name of the subject, I'm sorry I didn't end with that. The name of the individual, the subject, is Davion Roberts. I know the media has obtained that name. He's 25 years old. 2 addresses, one of Buffalo, and then there is an address in the state of Georgia. I know the media has had that. We have not, as a police department, released that, but obviously I'm releasing that now. The 2 officers that were involved, the officer that discharged his firearm is Ronald Ammerman. He's been with the police department for 7.5 years, and Jonathan Crawford, who's been with the police department now for 2 years.
The officers, are they technically suspended pending the investigation? Can you elaborate a little bit more about that?
No, as is standard policy, they're on administrative leave. They're not suspended, they're on administrative leave.
Are they both? Even Crawford?
Both officers at this time are on administrative leave. There's kind of a dual purpose to that as well. They're going to need time to process this. You can't just come back to work the day after being involved in a situation like that. I know Officer Crawford did not discharge his firearm, but you got to take some time. You got to decompress. There's a process to go through. So they're both at this time on administrative leave, and it's you know, I think that's something that we've seen in our studies and our research of officer wellness, that you've got to have time to process. It's a traumatic incident for them as well.
Commissioner, when looking at the footage, why does the officer not let go of the car as it starts driving off?
You know, I wasn't there. I wasn't in that situation. I can only answer based on my opinion. I think that it occurred so fast that when he had his arm on the car accelerated at such a rapid speed. I believe, and this is just my opinion, I believe that he found himself going at such a fast speed that if you let go, you're potentially looking at very serious physical injury or death. Now, we don't know what would have happened beyond that, but fortunately for the officer, he was able to come out of that okay, physically okay, and it ended. And the 6-year-old child that was in the car, don't forget, was able to be, I'll call it, saved from that situation. No injuries, reported to the child. So it's, these situations, they're not, they don't evolve in a classroom. They don't evolve in a training facility. This is real life. It's not, there's not a lot of control the way some of these situations go down. We can train for various situations, but when it happens in real life, when they're actual situations, they always happen differently than what they do in a training facility. So I think that car you saw in the video, it was at 0 to 60 in a very rapid succession, and I think the officer did what he had to do to survive, and I think the officer did what he had to do to try to also get that car stopped, and fortunately, he was able to.
Well, I understand the officer felt his life was in danger, but is there any consideration that he shouldn't be firing at point-blank range, given that the 6-year-old is right there in the passenger seat?
I think of the other side of that thing, that if he did nothing and he got kicked off of the side of the car continued on, the car crashed, he might be dead or very seriously injured, and if the car crashed, the 6-year-old as well. It's again, these situations do not happen in a vacuum. They're rapidly evolving, and he made the call based on the scenario, the situation he found himself in. And as I said, a vehicle can be a deadly weapon. And in this particular case, I believe that the officer's use of force was justified given the circumstances that he found himself in.
Have your detectives been able to interview the 2 officers yet?
So no, not yet. The officers have garrity rights that they will be interviewed at some point, but the detectives, and as well as the Attorney General's office at some point will interview them. They'll work through the officers' attorneys. This is standard protocol, and at some point they will be interviewed.
Have you been able to determine what exactly Officer Adderman did to slow the vehicle down? Did he have his foot in the car to push on the pedals? Or?
I can make an assumption. I can presume. It's kind of, it's not as easy to tell, but it looks like that he was able to get his legs inside of the car to help do that. And I think there was a fight that was ensuing over, getting the car stopped, slowed down, continuing on. But more of that will come into detail in the actions that he took when he is ultimately interviewed.
Can you explain what was going on with the ID? It seemed like it wasn't valid. Was it somebody else's name?
So the ID itself is an ID. There is no driver's license. He does not have a driver's license in the state of Georgia, and he does not have a driver's license in the state of New York either. So although there is an ID that was there, there is no valid driver's license.
Was it his name, though? Did he give his real name at that point?
That ID did have his name on there, right? Yeah, so that was his ID on the, that was shown on the phone.
Can you also talk about, it really happens very quickly. Everything seems fairly calm. The officer opens the door, he's right there, and then boom. What happened?
I can only go by what I saw on there as well, and what happened is he threw it in drive and hit the gas pedal, and the car took off. So it went at an extremely rapid pace, and you could see the speeds that they were up to within a second or two.
Did Roberts have any outstanding warrants or anything that he would be?
So he is currently under indictment for attempting to shoot somebody. Back on April 22nd, 2024, the Buffalo Police Department arrested him for allegedly firing shots at another individual. That case was presented to a grand jury, and ultimately he was indicted for attempted assault in the first degree and criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree. He was arraigned on June 4th. I know that's public. The DA's office put out a press release on that indictment. And again, we found a handgun in the car while he was out of custody. He was allowed to remain free at the time of his arraignment on that indictment. So there is a prior felony conviction on his record that, if that came into play, given the circumstances of everything, I think, only unfortunately Mr. Roberts knows why he took off, I can surmise.
I know you said that the investigation into the whereabouts of the weapon is still ongoing. Is there any other details you could present about that weapon in particular, whether it was legal, illegal?
Well, obviously, it was illegally possessed. As far as the tracing goes, in the video that's being sent out, we'll have a picture of the gun at the end of it. But that gun is in the process of being traced, so we will determine more information on the origins of that gun.
And you said the family's been going through a lot, especially with what they've been dealing with over the years. I mean, how are they processing this, and how's the 6-year-old child as well as a result of all this?
Again, I don't want to get into the conversations that we had this morning, but, obviously it's their loved one, so obviously they're traumatized. It's, regardless of the situation that occurred, this is still their loved one, and it's going to take time for them to process. And, I know if that were my child that were in the car, I'd be devastated and thankful that he came out completely unscathed. And, I think that's because of the work that Officer Ammerman did on trying to, stop that car. And you saw the actions of Officer Ammerman. He sprinted a good distance down the street going after that moving car, and was able to get that child out of the car. And you can hear his words and what he said when he embraced that child. So, the child's hopefully will get some help. There's resources out there. It's a lot to process at that age.
Was the child turned over to CPS or to the family?
No, to the family. So the officers maintained custody, I guess, of the child until the mother was able to get on scene, and then the child was reunited with the mother at that point.
And can you comment on what Officer Ammerman is referring to? At the beginning of the video, it seems like he's indicating that the driver, in this case Roberts, was on the right side of the car or, in the passenger seat potentially, and then switched over to the driver's side. Do you know what was going on there?
No, that's information that we'll get when we have an opportunity to speak with Officer Ammerman. Body cameras, as I said yesterday, they are vitally important to trust and transparency and evidence gathering in our line of work, and for the benefit of the community as well. But they don't tell everything, they don't show everything. So you can see the view. We obviously cannot see the vehicle, but that's something that we'll be able to determine when we talk to Officer Ammerman and ask him what exactly he was referring to by those words that he mentioned in the beginning.
And can you confirm the Jalen Griffin connection? And you were referring to the criminal possession of a weapon case that he's already been charged with. Was that in connection to the vigil that was held for Jalen Griffin?
So that arrest occurred on April 22nd. What it was in connection to, I'm not going to comment on. That case obviously was in court. I'm not going to get into the motives or connections of that, but other than confirming the fact that we did arrest him back on the incident occurred on April 22nd. He was taken into custody the following day on April 23rd.
Usually make a model of the car.
Ford Fusion 2012.
Thank you. 2012 Ford Fusion.
Was it his sister's car?
It's registered to somebody else.
Anyone else?
But not stolen, right?
Not stolen.
Nothing
No,
like that.
not stolen.
How about the gun? It was found under the driver's seat. Was it like hidden, or was it just under there?
Under the driver's seat. That's as far as I'll go with it. That'll be on the search warrant return, but it was found underneath the seat. I wouldn't say it was hidden, but it was underneath the seat.
Do we know why Officer Ammerman asked him to step out? Is unlicensed operation of the vehicle like an arrest?
So at that point, and you can hear what the officer said, but he obviously was not able to drive a car, cannot prove a driver's license. He was insistent that he had one, although our DMV checks, both in Georgia and New York, revealed that there wasn't one. So he's not able to drive a car. He was going to have to step out of the car regardless, but you can hear in the conversation, and again, I keep going back to just how routine of a traffic stop this was. What the officer had at that situation is something that at that moment, at most, are a couple of traffic summonses. This was as routine as it gets, but he was going to have to come out of the car regardless because he could not drive the car, he could not remain in the car, and as the officer said, he wanted to have him step out of the car. That was going to happen, and then also talk further about, he was insistent that there was a license to try to further gain more information that would help him positively identify him or see if there was a driver's license in another name. It does happen more than you think where people do not give us accurate information, which prevents us from finding the information that we're looking for. So he was going to have him step out of the car regardless. That was perfectly legal, perfectly within policy to do that.
And just a quick follow-up, is it protocol, so Officer Ammerman reaches inside and opens the door?
You know, I don't know if there was something going on with the outside handle or not, or maybe if the door was locked. You know, again, that's really inconsequential, is the fact that how he opened the door.
Would an officer open the door?
Sure, he could, sure.
This is off topic, folks at the station want us to ask what the
Let's just wind up with this.
There was the officer saying, you know, you're going to kill me, and then there was a lot of commotion and sounds from the car speeding, and then the next time we hear is from Roberts. Is there any clarification as to if there was communication between those points when the car was speeding?
I mean, you heard Officer Ammerman say multiple times, "You're going to kill me, you're going to kill me." Said it multiple times. Beyond that, I don't recall, you know, picking up any other conversation.
Were they on regular patrol, or they partnered normally with police officers? And was Crawford, is he a full-fledged officer, or is he probationary?
No, he's actually, his 2-year anniversary is coming up in a couple of weeks, so he's off probation. So he's you know, I guess full-fledged, if you will. He's not a probationary police officer. They were in a detail car, what's called a 90 car. It's our, you know, sector cars, and then there's a 90 car. So they were in a detail car.
What was the purpose of theirs? Are they out?
A lot of directed patrols, you know, doing our crime strategy, being visible in different areas. So it's part of our normal directed patrol details.
Yesterday you said all 5 shots hit Roberts. Were they all in the torso area?
There were, yes.
Are we good? If there's no off topics, we're good, and you folks now are free to release the video. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.